hi to you. My husband just had the camera on slow motion. Anyway, that would have been really awkward. Anyway, good to see you guys. And just really beautiful day out. And I hope you're enjoying your springtime. I know that some places have snow, which we did like a month ago. We had just like one day of cold weather or something. But we've had an unusually cold spring. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the title is Sacrificial Service. And we're going to use an example of Corrie ten Boom. We're going to start with Ephesians 6:7. With goodwill render service as to the Lord, not to people. I was looking at this verse and thinking about Paul's letter to the Ephesians. And Ephesians is kind of split up into two sections. And the first 3 chapters emphasize more doctrine type things. And the last 3 talk more about our behavior. You know, the doctrine kind of gives you your framework. And then what is our response to that? And, Ephesians talks about, shield and breastplate and, all those things, and our armor for us to go out and be vigilant in what we do. And we so need that. But this verse is telling us to remember who we're working for. Not that we're just going to do ABC and everything's perfect, but who are we working for? For God himself, not for other people who are telling us what to do. And I think as you get closer in your walk with God, you're seeing him through things and you're serving because you love his people, and you grow, and it's not as self-centered. It can get that way so quickly though. Last week I just brought up the fact that this summer I thought we'd go over some chapters in my new book, Bold, because we've gone through some of the testimonies a little bit, a couple of them, and there's another section that's about heroes of faith, and then there's some Bible examples, which we've done. We've talked about Paul and David, and so I just thought we'd hit some of those things, and people who, if you want to term them heroes of faith, encourage us, because we look at what they've done and it's like, wow, I guess I could do that. And so they encourage us. And the more you read books from some of those people, it's like, yeah, what they do, they spent a lot of time with God to help them through whatever it was to be able to do what they did. And it's just kind of amazing. And as I was writing that book, and originally it was just like all about, I'll get all these people that are current day people to write some testimonies and stuff. And I just thought, man, we have to share about some of these people. And we have to share Bible examples of people who were really bold for their faith. So the book kind of grew from like 13 chapters to like 30 chapters. But I just wanted to share a few stories, and just so you kind of understand some of those people. And today we're going to look at Corrie ten Boom, who many of you know who she is. I actually had the privilege, this will show you how old I am, in college she came to a chapel service. And I don't have a real big recollection of what she said right there. Maybe it wasn't a chapel, maybe it was a special evening series or something that we had, and she came briefly. And she died a couple years after that. She had had a couple of different strokes. And anyway, if you don't know who she was, her story kind of centered around World War II. And her family were watchmakers in the Netherlands. And there was 4 kids. And they were believers and loved their Bible and loved God. And things were growing worse with World War II, and they were really seeing what was happening with people being killed and people taken to concentration camps, and what was happening to the Jews specifically, but the other people too. And they decided, they had an architect friend, and they decided to build a secret room in their house. And the room was big enough for about 6 people. And they even put in like little buzzers throughout the house, which was a couple stories, I think, 2 or 3 stories. And they if they thought the Gestapo was coming down the street, they would push the buzzer, and they had it down to like, a little over a minute to where they could get into the room. And it's figured that they approximated that they probably saved about 800 lives. And one day, the people were hidden and were not found, but they rounded up family members. And I'm not sure where they all went, but Betsy and Corey and their dad, Betsy was an older sister, and their dad were taken to one place for a while, and then they were sent to Ravensbrück, which was one of the big concentration camps. And their dad died not that long after them going there. His health wasn't very good, and he was older. And then a while after that, I don't know, I'm sorry, the time frame, Betsy died. And she was probably in her 50s. I don't know how old she was. She wasn't really old, but, it's just they were such bad conditions. And one of the famous stories, which I actually didn't write down, but what's really weird about this is that I was going to share about this, and then in my Sunday school class on Sunday, somebody shared about this, which is exciting. It was like, wow, this is really supposed to happen this week. And anyway, one of the stories they shared is one that I had remembered from reading The Hiding Place, which maybe you saw the movie or you've read that book, was that they had smuggled in a Bible, and they just prayed angels would protect it and shield it so no one would notice that Bible, because all their clothes were taken and everything, but somehow they still ended up with the Bible. It's clearly a miracle. And in their dorm or whatever it was, their room, the place that they had, they were able to share the Bible and read from the Bible. And none of the guards, no one ever came in there. The place was filthy. It smelled like urine. There was several people per platform, 12 by 12 platform that they had made of straw. And it was just really bad conditions. And they had really bad fleas. And when they first discovered they had when Corey realized they had fleas, she was so upset. And Betsy told her, you got to pray for everything. And thank God for the fleas. And later, they realized that none of the guards ever came in there because of the fleas. And so you don't know what's going to happen in your life from what God brings in and how he's going to use something. But Betsy ended up dying. And then later, Corey ends up being set free after a while, and the other people around 50, in their 50s, women in their 50s, were killed. But she ended up being able to not die, and she devoted her life to helping other people, telling others about Christ, touring till she was elderly. She also was a watchmaker. And she also, one of her passions was to help people with psychological disorders, especially because of the war. And anyway, so she did a lot with her life. And she shared God's love no matter what her circumstances were. Here's a few quotes from her. Any concern too small to be turned into prayer is too small to be made into a burden. Yes, for sure. That's true. If we can't pray about it, if we say we don't have time for that, how do we have time to deal with what the burden is? Let God's promises shine on your problems. Yeah. Let him help you with it. Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. He knows the future. That's one that you see on t-shirts, and that's probably one of her most famous quotes. And this one, memories are the key, not to the past, but to the future. I know that the experience of our lives, when we let God use them, become the mysterious and perfect preparation for the work he will give us to do. There we go. He's preparing us through our trials for the work he's going to give us to do. I have to say that my life was a lot of difficulties. 3 people in the past week asked me how I got started with my ministry, and am I working on a 4th book, which right now I'm not trying to get these workbooks done. But you know, I go back to the beginning. Well, I wrote my first one. I didn't really consider myself an author or anything, but I wrote my first one because everybody kept saying someone needed to tell that story. And so God used my adversity to try to encourage others in their faith. And I think he does that with each of us. My mama, in her later years, when she was happiest of her life, she died at 97. She was so faithful in praying for everybody. I told you before, she read through her entire church directory. She would sit on the edge of her bed. I mean, she'd kind of shrunk down to be like, she was like 80 pounds, 75 pounds. She'd sit on the edge of her bed. And a lot of times my sister got to sit there in a chair with her in the evening. And she'd take her Bible out, and she had her little nightstand light on. She would read something from her Bible, and then she would read, the little booklet, Our Daily Bread. She would read that, and then she would read this Corrie ten Boom book each new day. As you can see, it's very well worn, and she would just read just like a little, there's like daily things in here, and she would just read that day's thing, devotion in there, and she would do that every day. She died in the month of November, several years ago, and in October was when she kind of quit being able to do that, a couple weeks before she died. But she was so faithful, even when she didn't feel good. She still read. So I was just going to read. I left a bookmark. Well, she had left the bookmark, and then I left it in here. And I'm just going to read these couple little excerpts. I have a book in my hand. This is October 7th. The book can be on the table or on the chair, but it must lie somewhere. So it is with your past. Do you bear your past and sins of your past yourself? My past is too heavy for me to bear. Lord, it makes me weak and ineffectual. Thank you for taking the burden from me. And the verse she gives is Isaiah 53:6. The Lord has laid on him, Jesus, the iniquity of us all. October 8th. The reality which we see by faith is more important than results of our logical thinking. We walk by faith, not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. Lord, when there is no vision, people perish. Make and keep our faith strong and powerful through your Holy Spirit so that we see your pattern. Very true. October 9th. There are great lessons to learn concerning faith and the nature of character of faith when you read in the Bible about the disciples. I'm grateful for the record of every mistake they ever made, every blunder they committed. I see myself in them. I do too. The Bible speaks truth and shows and pictures every human frailty. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, O men of little faith?" Then he rose and rebuked the winds and sea, and there was a great calm. Matthew 8:26. And then she says, Lord, thank you that you do not ask a great faith, but great faith in a great God. This is a wonderful book. to read, and maybe you have some devotionals that you read in the evening along with your Bible. And many of you do things in the morning. I'm not able to do that, but anyway, she just wanted to share how she overcame and how everybody else can too. And this is truthfully one of the reasons we've done this whole video series. And you know, that's what he wants from us. He wants us to use things in our life. And the things he puts there are opportunities for us to share the gospel. To encourage believers to live intentionally so that they can share the gospel. That's what we've been talking about. And God gives each of us a journey to share. And we have trials and joys and ups and downs. And every one of you have a life worth sharing, no matter what it is. We all have a story to tell, so we can minister to others. I had a rough testimony to share, but I became a Christian in my teens and then went to a Christian college. It was kind of escaping and somewhat just wanting to be around people who were mentally healthy and loved God, and I just was yearning for that. I met so many kids there. They grew up in really loving, wonderful Christian homes. And some were like me and just, had a rougher start or didn't live in a Christian home. But there was so many kids like that. And, they might not have had some, testimony that was really terrible and then God saved them and they, that kind of testimony. A lot of them just got saved when they were 5 and grew up in a Christian home and grew in their faith and just lived that kind of life, and they encouraged me. They didn't need some fancy, what we would think of a fancy testimony, because I needed normalcy and I needed the peace that they could share with me, and the verses they shared with me. Just wonderful, dear friends that I just love dearly. And you may think, oh, well, my testimony is not very important. It's not, it's not a showstopper or anything, and it doesn't need to be. Because God's giving you your life and your journey so that you could share it with someone else. And someone that you're sharing with could be like me, where I just wanted someone who grew up normal, kind of, and loved God and had a peace within. And I just needed that. And so he's got his eye on you to share your heart with others, just based on who he's created you to be and the journey he's taken you on and the path that you've been on. And you can share that with anybody, no matter who you are or they are. You can share your journey because that's what he gave you to share. You don't have to be like Corrie ten Boom to do that. But today I was going to actually share 2 people's journeys. I was going to share Corrie ten Boom and Jim and Elizabeth Elliot. But it's just too much because we need to kind of concentrate on this and what Corrie ten Boom went through, and that she used her entire life to help other people because God showed her that. And he saved her from this situation that was horrid and showed his power to her so she could really believe. And it was amazing. Her sister had great faith and was encouragement to her. But God took Betsy and left Corrie, and she just maybe in some ways was a go-getter, and God knew she was going to go out and share. And I just kept thinking, when I kept thinking of this and how neat this was, that she was just freed and loving God. And I just kept thinking of this song. I was in the chorale at my college briefly, not all 4 years, and we sang this song that was based on Isaiah 55:12, and I could just sing it in my head. I won't sing it for you, but I sing it in the house sometimes or in the shower or whatever. And So, my friend, you shall go out with joy, be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break into shouts of joy before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And just share your joy from the hilltop to whoever with your story. Share your story with everyone you see. And we'll see you next week. God bless.